On November 29, 1947, the United Nations General Assembly convened in New York for its 128th plenary meeting. On the day's agenda, a vote to partition British Mandatory Palestine into two independent states, an Arab state and a Jewish state. The resolution required a two-thirds majority to pass. Most representatives from the Jewish Agency had returned to Palestine, as few believed the resolution would garner enough votes. One exception, a Jewish Agency delegate, Abba Eban, liaison officer to the UN Special Committee on Palestine, who thought the situation could change. In Eban's retelling, they took a map of the world, divided it, and worked on persuading the delegates. Despite their efforts, they still needed to secure 3 or 4 more votes. And the clock was ticking. Eban said telegrams went out all over the world, and powerful people were woken up at midnight for what seemed like an impossible mission. He recalled that everyone wielded whatever influence they had to, quote, turn the tide in our favor. France had planned to abstain, but Eban said he convinced Chaim Weizmann, a Zionist leader with the Jewish Agency delegation, to contact Léon Blum, the former French Prime Minister and longtime friend. Weizmann asked Blum, does France really wish to be absent from a moment that will forever be etched in the memory of humanity? In 1896, a young Austrian-Hungarian journalist, Theodor Herzl, published the book The Jewish State. He wrote it in the wake of the Dreyfus Affair, an anti-Semitic political scandal in France. Herzl was alarmed by growing anti-Semitism across Europe. He wrote, "If you will it, it is no dream. Give us sovereignty over a sufficient piece of land to meet our people's needs, and the rest we shall manage ourselves."
Herzl
hoped that if the Jewish people were to have their own state, they would be a people like any other and treated as such, and then anti-Semitism would gradually diminish. But he also acknowledged in his writings that anti-Semitism was so deeply rooted and so entrenched over so many centuries that it was possible this hope may never be realized. And he could see no other solution to address anti-Semitism and the diaspora but to create a state and live there.
1 year later, he chaired the first ever Zionist Congress at a concert hall in Basel, Switzerland. The goal was to establish a national home for the Jewish people. One of the participants described Theodor Herzl as the secular black-bearded Messiah who would lead them to the Promised Land. The crowd was energized, and a refrain rang out through the hall, "Next year in Palestine." The following year, Herzl traveled for the first and only time to Egypt and then to Palestine. He wrote in his journal, "Jerusalem is magnificent. The city of David in the moonlight is impressive."
What he described